the day would be a little bit more condensed to see what we've done in the past. And that's when you'd have the morning versus the afternoon sessions. But we cannot do that while families are choosing to distance learn when we have in-school learning happening. So with that said, that gives kind of the premise around some of our conversations that may be happening. If you have questions, I see while the chat room is starting to populate, if anybody has any questions they want to ask orally, I'm opening up the floor to questions. And I'm going to scroll just a moment to the second screen to make certain I don't have any hands that I am not seeing raised. Oh, I do see. Hi, Sherry. Go ahead.
So I just put this in the chat, but maybe other people can relate to this question. So I have a soon-to-be first grader, and he did struggle a lot in kindergarten, and the teachers were excellent with him on Zoom during distant learning, but you know, he does work with the school psychologist and he does reading interventionists, and I don't know if anybody's in the same boat, but my concern with I'm trying to debate what is best for him, because I think he's best in school with the teachers one-on-one or, you know, in the classroom setting. However, I'm concerned, like you were saying, with the masks, like he already has like certain challenges, you know, sounding out certain, combining certain sounds, etc. So then I'm like, well, is it better that he does it via Zoom so then they're not, you know, they're not restricted by a mask?
So I am going to say we are, and I know Kathy's looking at ways to do some clear mask opportunities and some things that we are looking about what is good teaching. But there are things, especially if they're getting services, we have looked in, not even just looked into, we have purchased, I can't say plexiglass, just so you know, plexiglass, hyper flammable, can't do it. We have gotten polycarbonate. So that way it can have some proximity, because we realize that there are some services that need to have the closeness that occurs. But I can also tell you there may be times in class that we have the children with their devices open because they may need to see the teacher. She may need to enunciate it and may use the webcam for the whole class to see some of these things. So I don't want you to think that when they're in person, it means they're without technology. We're going to be looking for the optimal moments, and sometimes the best way to communicate may be technology, even when they're within the classroom.
I see. Thank you.
No. I don't want to mislead. One of the reasons that probably pushing and wanting in person is there and is a strong desire is because we recognize the limitations of distance learning. Mm-hmm. And but that said, and I want everybody to know, I am very Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Safety and feeling secure is the basis. You cannot learn if you don't have those feelings. So just recognizing that's out there. So I just share that with everyone. But for right now, we've designed more for in-person, and how do we get access to in-person for those who are distance learning.
Megan, maybe you can share a little bit about summer school, because we have some students that are getting some supports in summer school, and it's been going quite well.
Summer school has been amazing. Our summer school has been our ESY program, which is an extended school year program. So we have a number of our students who have special needs who are currently learning in person. Some of our children who can be very sensory have actually done a wonderful job with masks. We have done mask breaks. And I've said this to everybody, but I'm going to promise you they get into their car and their masks come down. You know, it's an exhausting day, even though we're trying to build in those accommodations. But I can tell you the use of proximity, they have been able to access the learning. We are seeing growth with them being in person. So again, I'm going to credit the teachers. One of our teachers is Miss Brooks, who you all know is amazing. And she's been able to do it with both a mask and a shield on to make certain that learning is happening even for our youngest learners. So there are challenges. I don't want to make it seem like this is just easy. We need to get our children ready to mourn the loss of normal, because they want to come into school and hug their teachers and, and hug their friends. And we can't, I know, look, I'm looking at this hug right now. I'm missing it. But it's to say to you, we need to get our children to know that that physical expression of love is not going to be what's going to happen next year. And your teacher loves you so much. Start practicing air high fives, because we're going to do a lot of those things. We may break out and do like little dances to celebrate an achievement, because we can't do some of those things where, the gold star on papers and things that we've gotten used to. So it is mentally preparing our children for the difference that's going to happen. Because if they come back into school and just think that, oh, they're just going to pick up where we left off on March 12th, they're going to be disappointed. Mm-hmm. It's going to feel like they are suffering a loss. Versus if we see them instead and see, here are the opportunities that we have. So you may not be able to go on a playscape right now, but you know what? And Kathy, I'm going to steal what you said before. You've got your chalk and you've got your jump rope, and it's just in a little container, and that's yours. And you're jump roping, and your friend is 6 feet away, but you're jump roping together. We're going to have kids who are just going to get used to talking louder because they're trying to have communication. But we want them to talk to their friends. We want them to have those exchanges. So we just need to do this safely.
Megan, are you able to see the chat questions in the chat window? Because that might be a good way to kind of go down a list of questions for everybody.
Yep, I'm heading to there now. So thank you. And thank you for learning that it's being populated. So can we discuss the bus and lunch options? MPE. So let's start with the bus. The bus will not have 6 feet apart. The bus will require the children to be masked up. We will have monitors to start the school year in order to make certain that our children are able to handle the routines of the bus. One of the things I need us to just know, because I think sometimes when we think of what a full bus looks like, we have varying degrees of images in our head. Our fullest bus in Region 12 is Chippewa Bus 6. There are 46 riders who are able to ride that bus. That said, there has only been as much as 25 children on that bus. So what the state mandates is that you provide a seat for every child in the bus. Whether or not they utilize that seat is a different question. So our most full bus is 25 students. So it would be the 1 student per seat. When I gave out the survey to our families, and please know, yes, the survey only gave you two options, yes or no. Are you planning to come to school? Yes or no. And the reason is because we need to start making plans for staffing. I need to start figuring out, how are we designing desks with some kind of rough estimate that gets us close enough to what it would look like opening day. Of that survey, 80% of families said that they were willing to return to in-person schooling. In that survey, only 50% of families said they are willing to put their children on the bus. So that should just give you some parameters of what we're looking at. What is the scope of what ridership would look like? But no, I do not want anyone to be confused. We are cohorting our children once they get into school. And they are not going to be cohorted by neighborhoods, so I can't have where one bus stays together. So we will be doing temperature checks when they come into school. And that is one of our ways to just control for monitoring for symptomatology of potential COVID. So any questions about the bus? I know I gave like a very broad brushstroke. We will have monitors the first couple weeks to get in the routines. But after that, once we've routined the children, they will be masked, sitting forward, windows down. which also means if we make it to October without having to close, make certain your children are dressed for windows down on the bus because ventilation is going to be important. Okay. I'm going to go to the next part of the question, which is about lunch options. Right now, and again, I'm going to say as of today, we recognize I cannot have volunteers and I cannot have visitors within the school. We are trying to have a controlled environment, which means that I know that the PTO has done an amazing job with providing lunches and that being an option. That will not be an option for next year. Children who may need to access our free and reduced lunch program, we will be providing bagged lunches from Chippewa. We will have the milk service that is able to be purchased. At that point, the teachers will be collecting. There can be no cash that is exchanged. It would just be us recording and then putting it in electronically. So people would need to utilize our My School Bucks account. Did I say that right? So that's what we have. So yes, there is the additional burden to families regarding lunch for next year until we can indeed allow visitors into our schools. As far as PE, and this I have to credit Mrs. Coelho, Mrs. Judd, and our Director of Curriculum Instruction, Mr. Brito. They actually came up with this brilliant idea. Rather than having our specials teachers go to each school during the year, what we're doing is we are going to do music for 4 weeks. And the music teacher would stay at booth free for 4 weeks. Then they would have art for 4 weeks. And part of this is to, one, stop the spread across our towns, but also to keep our teachers safer. And also as a distance learning family to know that you're just working with potentially one content area for specials. We're hoping reduces some of the pressure that may happen. But that said, where available, we will be outside. Now, we cannot rely on Mother Nature for always behaving, which means a lot of the music, we are not going to vocal music. We will not be having elementary instruments right now, knowing the projectiles and the proximity that's needed would need to be expanded. So we will do outdoors as much as possible, controlled stations. But it also may be that when music is inside, they may be pounding on a drum. It may be just doing a beat to their desk. It may be standing and swaying to the music and finding the beat within something that's being produced for them, then more than they are the producers of that music. But PE, we want kids outdoors. We want them to be active. We are right now one of the fewer districts who are still running some sort of PE and music class. But I think if we can get that additional space between students, we should capitalize on that. Nicole, did that answer the questions? All right. Silence is golden sometimes. Next question I have, families that choose distance learning while school is in session, will those children have access to the same school day lessons via remote as the kids in school and live learning? Yes, and that's exactly what's going to happen is it's synchronous learning where they will have access to the teacher's direct instruction during that school day. Did I answer that, Michelle? Because I think that there's another part to that. I want to make certain that I'm
that answered it. I just wanted to clarify that I understood that it would actually be that live lesson. I guess there's just a little concern. I mean, are the kids at home going to be left behind? The teachers aren't necessarily going to be paying as much attention to the kids that are home. That was just my only concern.
And I am going to say, I think that there is the element in which priority is going to go to the children who are in front of them. That is the people who the teachers are providing care for at that moment. However, I do think that there's going to be, we have some very creative teachers, and I'm already hearing the conversations of instead of having a line leader, you know how everybody had like their weekly chore, you may have a Zoom question reader and, you know, somebody who's kind of monitoring for some of those things. So there's truly ways that we can get creative, and whether or not we have to utilize some of our support staff to also make certain we're monitoring where we can. But I do not want to overpromise the support. I can tell you distance learning will have a element of a degree of separation from the learning. And I don't know how to say it in any other way, and there's no pun intended, but there is a degree of separation that happens, and it does create a lessening of some of the interactions that may happen between the student and the teacher. However, they will get the same assignments. They will get the same direct instruction. They will get their assignments corrected by their teacher. They will get that returned and have feedback. So those parts, they will have things questioned, answered, and it's about us finding management ways where we can do it while it's happening. A question, how much of 6 hours of the school day will children be required to wear masks? And what I'm going to say to that is that children will be required to wear masks. We will have mask breaks. We are looking for all opportunities to get kids outside. If we can get them outside, we can take masks off. There's also a conversation I've had with our Department of Health where we may be doing rolling mask breaks in the classroom, where I may say every other roll, take off your masks. Because then I've got 12 feet distance versus just the 6 feet. So we will be looking to make it not seem oppressive. But I also don't want kids to think that while we're in classroom, then my mask just goes down. We are not in the position to do that at this time. But we are certainly, you know, when they're eating, masks are going to be off. When they go to take a drink, we understand masks are going to be off for those short periods of time. And then we're going to actually create those opportunities. And again, to the best extent possible, looking for abilities to go outside.
So we'll encourage teachers to take classes out. Say they're doing a read aloud, read aloud. Well, that's a great time to take kids outside and distance them and let them take their masks off and let the teacher read. There could be other times too. It could be a math lesson. You're outside. So if the weather is good, we have lots of green space, I'm going to be encouraging those teachers to do that.
Excellent. So if school does reopen in person, will parents be able to choose the hybrid option? And that is the one option that is not a choice. We cannot have you in some of the time and not some of the time. So if your choice is to distance learn, it is a full distance learn choice. That said, here's why I need to put in the disclaimer. If you make that choice in September, that does not mean you have to hold to that choice till June. We recognize that circumstances change. We ask families to make that decision quarterly in order to allow for continuity of learning. Also, if families do decide they want to return to school, we also are going to need to redesign learning space. Because I'm going to promise you, with every student who says I'm distance learning, I'm not leaving an empty desk where I could potentially capture a little bit more space that may allow for more opportunities with masks off. So what we're going to need to make certain is that if you do indeed choose to then return back to school, and it's my hope that we create conditions that make families feel safe enough to return their children to school, that we have the opportunity to reallocate space, which means it can't be the next day decision. We're also going to need to secure supplies for that child. Everything we're doing is individualized, so we really are asking our families to work with us in order to make certain that that transition is appropriate. The second part of that question, either fully online or fully in person, and I think we covered that. Any questions regarding hybrid, not hybrid?
Megan, this isn't directly connected to that, but there was a question earlier that Christy Nyman asked about, will the live lessons be recorded? And you talked about that a couple of questions ago, and I just want to make sure that question got answered because it was very early.
Currently, we do not have where it's automatically recorded. So families would need to prepare for the synchronous learning opportunities. Obviously, if there's a situation that's happening that we need to accommodate a medical condition or something that may be happening where we have a compromised child, we would certainly work for what needs to be recorded, what doesn't. But recording classrooms can be problematic when it comes to children's privacy. But it is one that I'm going to say, I don't think I fully teased it out with legal yet. So right now I'm saying we have live lessons. Please plan for the live lessons. If something changes, it would be coming back from that extreme.
Mhm.
Okay. For families that choose distance learning at the beginning of the year, they're able to opt into person during the fall semester. And I think we covered that. So it's good to know. I think a lot of people have that question on their mind. And also recognizing we know as trends are going to happen. If you choose to be in, and I am not canceling school soon enough, you can go to distance learning. That is a choice that you are able to make. But again, recognizing we need to set up for some of those opportunities and what it would look like. If we're getting information from the Department of Health that it is encroached into one of our regional zones, they have moved Connecticut into 5 zones, and they're saying that right now spread mitigation is not working and we have concerns, they may close down one of our regions. But if you are starting to feel like it's in the zone next to us and you're not closing, there is discretion parents have to go in the other direction. The thing that I am asking is not to have the back and forth. I'm also telling families that if your child is sick, let them be sick. They are not to distance learn that day. So you're either distance learning or you are in person, but the back and forth is not going to be something that we can support. Next question is, will masks be provided for children, or a recommendation for the type of mask for us to purchase? We do have masks for the children. That said, sometimes the more fun masks that kids would want are not going to be the ones that we provide, although we have some really cute bandana ones that go across. They look like little cowboys. But if there's something where it's your child, they want to have something that's their personality on it, I would say that is a parent purchase. The part that you need to make certain, oh my gosh, I'm seeing some friends, is that you want to make certain it is secure to their face. We need to make certain it doesn't drop down below their nose. If we are starting to see that it becomes more of a chin guard and not staying up there, we may give them a different mask for them to actually use for that day. And that said, once we give a child a mask, it is their mask. If we start to see that they are going through a lot of masks, we will reach out and talk to you. But no, the school will be providing that PPE. So I know that there are some people that they like the ones that come down here and can just cover. We have children who are utilizing that during summer school. We have not put restrictions right now. The statement was a face covering, and that's what we're using as our threshold. Kara, you asked a great question. I'm still waiting for the DPH to weigh in on whether a face shield, and if it's just the shield, does that count as the covering? So I am waiting. Once I get that answer for Kara, I'm going to share it with everybody. But it was a great question. But we are not providing face shields for all children. So that is something, unless we have a medical condition or something that we're accommodating for, that would not be provided to children. All right. Question about movement breaks, recess, and mass breaks. Recognizing that as it is, where kids aren't even going to get to walk to specials. The specialists are coming to them. That a lot of their life is going to be contained within that classroom and socially distanced. And Kathy, would you mind talking, because I know you talked about what recess is going to look like. You might want to talk about what even mass breaks outdoors is going to look like. So I'll turn that to you.
Yeah, so throughout the day, we're providing a break in the morning because we are not having morning recess. We've got to get kids into the classrooms because I can't bring everybody out at once. So each class will have a morning break outside. They're going to be encouraged to take the kids outside as much as possible to do academics. Recess and lunch is divided into 2 waves. K through 2 will have recess first, and 3 through 5 will have recess second. So I'm flip-flopping the eating part. I'm gonna divide the play area into stations. So on a daily basis, they rotate. It's still a work in progress. I mean, we were working with David Morgan with coming up with some activities. We're purchasing items so that each child has their own bag of items, like jump rope. It might be, oh, Kara, I can't even remember. We're ordering jump ropes and
Jump ropes, hacky sacks, little toy animals, and there's one more thing I can't remember. So they're ordered and on their way.
We're ordering chalk also.
Chalk,
So
that's right.
When we say little toy animals, we don't mean anything soft, right? We mean hard plastic ones.
Hard
they're
plastic.
yeah. So even if a child has, say, the black top, for instance, they can still do drawing with their friend with chalk. They've got their own items. And as we move forward, we'll probably be getting more. There's games like Frisbee golf, which we could set up, and each child has their own Frisbee, their name is on it, and they get points for tossing their Frisbee. So we're looking at a bunch of things that they can do, because we do want them outside. We do want them to move. We do want them to take a hike, maybe, go across the street. We want them, if they can find space outside, to eat outside. So I am encouraging staff to just get the kids outside where they can be 6 feet apart, they can take their masks down, they can enjoy themselves. I also am buying hula hoops. So especially for our little ones, they don't understand that distance. So if I use the hula hoop and put it down, we can say that's your personal space, and you can spread them out, and then they have their own little space, especially if the teacher wants to take them outside. So we're also doing spots, colored spots, where kids will know where to go when they line up. We can also use little tricks like stick your hands out in front of you, and if you're not anywhere near the person in front of you, you're giving distance. So visualizing that distance. So we're looking at lots of little strategies, and we are going to try to take them out as much as possible. We know that little kids cannot sit at desks all day long. Any questions about those ideas? Okay. Lunch, we're going to try to rotate. Depends on how many seats I can manage. At my cafeteria tables, I can only fit 2 students on one table, those long tables, one at each table facing in the same direction. So I'm hoping that I could do a rotation where a class can go into the lunchroom, into the gym 1 day a week, just to get out of their classrooms to eat. So between out of their classroom, in the gym, and outside, they'll have a variety of places to go.
There's a few questions on the chat pertaining to the playground usage. And
Yeah.
I think that piggybacks on what's being talked about. And it seems like that's something that the children should be able to use.
Are you talking about the playscape?
Yes.
Okay. Megan, I'm turning it over to you.
Oh, right now, because quite frankly, what we would have to do is we'd have to get our custodian out there to clean between waves. The physical demands of the day of our custodians right now, the amount of touch points they're going to have to clean, the amount of times they're going to have to clean the bathroom, the amount of times they're going to have to clean between our lunch waves. We do not have the bandwidth to clean between the sessions.
I mean, that's something that could be outsourced to somebody, and that's Hurlbut Park does the fogging on the playground.
But to say to you what can be outsourced, COVID is costing us a lot of money. We are looking at $2.3 million that we didn't have in this budget. So to say that we can just get, we don't have that right now.
What about the cost savings of when school was closed and the lack of using the facilities?
As far as the cost savings, school budgets don't work where it gets to get carried over. You have to spend it by June 30th. So there is not the ability to carry over within a school budget. So there were things that we were able to do, which is we were able to pay in advance rather than take debt service on an HVAC unit. We were able to pay for that, recognizing that the costs were going to be more this year. So we did buy PPE and things that were in advance of this year, so we could absorb some of the cost. However, we also know we had to create a new classroom. Those are teachers that were not budgeted for. We created a new classroom here at Booth because we recognized that multi-aging, just not a good thing to do at this time. And so all of these additional costs weren't worked into the budget. So I know I'm trying to keep children in school for as long as we can, but that also means that there are certain things that we have to sacrifice. And the question is constantly, what do we tighten our belt around, and how do we do it? Because when it comes to fun versus when it comes to safety, safety is going to win. But it's constantly, and I'm going to say to people, if you have ideas, come up. This is not, right now I've come up with a wall and we're saying no, but we're saying here's the other ways that we're going to make recess fun. But if there are opportunities in which we can move out, I know how horrible it is to say to a 6-year-old, that's an empty playground, don't play on it. It's torturous. But
What about, how does this differ from, say, usage of the hallways, the bathroom? I mean, kids walk down the hallway with their hands going down the wall. Kids are going to be touching the door to go in the bathroom, touching the knobs, touching the door to go into the stall. How is that different than touching the playground equipment?
Because we have our custodians who will be touching up those touch points. I think touching the wall, kids are going to have to walk down, with their hands at their sides, or we're walking in the middle of the hallway. We don't have multiple classes that will be in the hallway. So
how often are the bathroom facilities, the doorknobs, the doors, the stalls, how often is that being cleaned?
I'm going to tell you our statement is as much as possible. And I can't say to you 5 times a day, but I can tell you at this point, our custodians know they are constantly to be wiping down any touch points, to going back into the bathrooms. We are trying to make certain that only certain children use certain bathrooms, that cohorting effect, to reduce the potential for spread. So yes, I can tell you all of those areas that you have mentioned are compromised. So introducing new compromised areas is a problem. And so for right now, what I can say is we know, and John is wonderful. John better have a pair of roller skates, because the amount that's going to need to happen. And we are currently having the conversations about, do we have to bring second shift down to first shift? What is this going to look like? Because even after school, things now need to be sanitized. So I can't create more work when we already know that there are so many restrictions on how the day is going to flow, and what is the capacity of us to clean the areas that we're using.
So for instance, I have created a schedule that's posted in all the bathrooms, and every time John goes in there, he has to put the time that the bathroom was cleaned. He's going to get a schedule of when classrooms are going to be using the bathroom. And we know that other kids will go during other times, but we're hoping that if we bring groups down at a time, they'll all try to go to the bathroom, and then he can clean up right after that.
Can you expand on what this bathroom schedule is? This is the first that
Yeah, it's a schedule of every day of the week, and it's a schedule of going in. How many times in the morning did he go in to clean?
No, and this is where I'm going to say, Jess, we're talking about our custodians monitoring how many times that got cleaned, not how many times our kids used it.
Oh, so the kids can use the bathroom whenever they
can use the bathroom, but we're trying to do groups of children at one time, just to try to eliminate kids going nonstop all day, so that he can get in there, the custodian can get in there and clean it.
Okay, so if a child has to use the bathroom,
they can go.
It's not your scheduled time to use the bathroom. Okay.
Right, they can go. It's just that we're hoping that large numbers will use the bathroom and not have to go so many times during the day.
So I'm going to. We're trying to control movements. I'm not trying to turn children into robots. So those are the two things that we recognize happening. One of the statements that was made is that the desks to be faced forward in the same way. If you look at our reopening plan on page 27, that is the actual picture of a booth-free classroom. So you'll see all the desks are facing forward. They're distanced apart, so you can get a sense of what that looks like. And if anything, what would happen right now, we set that up just to see how many kids we could fit in. But even then, at that first row, may be eliminated in order to create more space, knowing that teachers may need to project their voices a little bit more. But we certainly are making certain everybody is in their space. 6 feet facing forward. So air conditioning. You have air conditioning. It is in. It is set up. It's
in.
there.
Yep.
So, and I think, and as the PTO knows, this was years in the making. We had to redo electric circuits and everything. So I'm going to say we do have that opportunity, and we will be using air conditioning. That said, I am right now, I will be recommending to the Board of Education to change our opening. The first day of school is on August 31st. I am actually thinking of doing early dismissal days for the first, if not week, 2 weeks, to get our children acclimated to the school conditions. And recognizing that there's a tolerance that needs to be built up a little. So we are looking at that. And we also know that it is during the hottest weeks of the year, tend to be the first 2 weeks of school. So even within air conditioning, because the air conditioning is still not that optimal. The optimal is the outdoor air. So we are controlling for that. We are doing a lot of things with our HVAC unit that will be running 2 hours before children get to school and 2 hours after school. So you all have to know our bills are gonna get higher, but again, making certain ventilation is something that we're considering. That at least is some good news. Jessica, I see that you say about having individual lunch services packaged to schools each day. You and I can talk offline. I'm saying no right now to prepare families to get themselves ready if they need to have a backup plan. If we can figure out something, but I'm going to say to you right now, it's an uphill battle, but we can certainly talk about that. And I do have to say thank you for still looking to provide for our families. Getting kids outside. We talked about confirm that SVS call that you cannot choose half home and half hybrid. We did talk about that it is the one decision and not both. The only person who can call the hybrid and have that happen is at the district level, that we've done that as the district phase 2. For families choosing distance learning, have we considered the opportunity for children to meet their teacher in person at some point? Oh, I like that idea. I think we should consider it. It wasn't something that we did do, but I think we'll make note of that because I think that's a really good, one of the things that I do fear with distance learning is that relationship that is built, it definitely is impacted. So I do think that the idea of how do you do that in an orientation and what it looks like. We were talking about having a week of, I don't want to call it professional development for children and families, but a week to how do we prepare families who are doing distance learning and what does that look like? So we are looking to have some of that occurring within the schools within the first week. So I think we were talking about whether or not we were going to use our interventionists to support some of that. Will they do classrooms outside during good weather? Yes, I just answered that question. Yay. Will snow days be distance learning days? Oh, that is a beautiful question. I don't see how they can make me take a snow day when we can prove we can teach distance. So I can tell you that is a conversation that we're having with the state. I think if the good thing that comes out of COVID is that snow days are a thing of the past, I think that would be a gorgeous thing and we could all rely on an actual calendar. But right now we don't know that yet. But I can tell you I am definitely ready to be the guinea pig to try it out. And just so you know, we did talk about, and I said the first day of school is August 31st. Region 12 historically does 183 days. I asked the board to forgive 3 days, so we are going 180 days, so the teachers have 3 additional days of professional development. We are at the 180 days. The day that I sent that out, the state then said, haha, 177 days. And so we are right now banking 3 days in the event if we have to go to all distance learning. I don't know about you, but I think those days that we got off and did a field day or had a day off in between, I'm keeping those in the hopper, but those do exist. So just by way of heads up. Can we explain why they can't use playground equipment with their cohort? And we did talk about that, and it comes down to our ability to clean it. But again, and I think I did write this in our plan, we will continue to evaluate that. As conditions change, we'll look for opportunities. And it's also looking at how do routines set in, and what we can find for opportunities. Will families need to purchase any supplies for students before the school year starts? Kathy, do you want to talk to that?
So typically we do send home school supplies, but at this point we have purchased what we need. It doesn't mean that teachers won't, once school starts, perhaps send something home and say, I'm really in need of this. Can you help me with that? And that would be your choice. So we're sort of holding off on that at the moment. We have individual boxes, clear, plastic boxes where kids' pencils and crayons and erasers and scissors and glue are all going to be in there. We have nice containers for their whiteboards, their note, paper, their workbooks and that kind of thing. So I think we're okay at the moment, but it's hard to really know, and I don't want to send a list out and then find out we don't really need those things. I'd rather wait till school starts, and if teachers need some things and we're kind of stuck, we'll send something home. Does that make sense for folks?
Okay. So, and I'm seeing here, and thank you, Sherry, for mentioning that if parents are willing to send in school supplies, issues, etc. I can tell you our asks may be different since everything would have to be individualized. So no longer would it just be a box of tissues, it may be those little tissue packets. But I appreciate the offer, and we will certainly let families know what we can use and can have for supports. I see the statement of knowing that both face shields and masks in order to be effective, and I'm going to say, like, I'm double checking, so I'm not going to weigh in on that one way or the other, but certainly asking our experts. As I joke with everybody, and I will say this, like, there was nothing on my resume that said epidemiology, not a word. So really relying on our experts, because we want to make certain that our conditions are safest for our children. I also want to share that I will actually be spending a lot of time at Booth Free next year because I'm going to have a satellite office there. And part of the reason is while Kathy is also at Burnham School, I will be at Booth School to make certain that there is a presence and that there's support in the building too. So we are recognizing that there's additional needs that are happening, and selfishly, I'm kind of excited. This way, it's also not anybody who can say that we don't know. I will be living the real-time experiences with your children and with you. But that said, it is absolutely Kathy's school, and if you guys really get angry, I'm just going to send you right to Kathy. So we are going to make certain that, again, this is about support, and we're doing everything we can to make certain everyone is supported. Because we're asking families to keep kids home when they are ill, when pre-COVID, we might have sent them home from school. These are the days that it might benefit families to have children move to remote learning for a day or two until it's just allergies. Would this be allowed? Again, the on and off would not be allowed. If there's something where you say it's allergy season, I know we might talk about distance learning for chunks of time, but we cannot have the day on and day off. It's too much, and it would not be beneficial for your child, nor for the classroom setup, again, if we need to utilize some of that space. So in order to plan and make it happen, we are asking for chunks of time for distance learning. If we move to the hybrid model, will the cohort groups be split alphabetically like SVS or by grades? And the answer is it will be by alphabet. Part of the reason is that we also recognize that families may need to be together, and we recognize that going to a hybrid model will impact people's jobs. Knowing that you're going to have to be with your children for 3 days out of the week, it has a lot of impact. And so to ask families to try to bounce around grade levels we recognize that may be putting an undue burden on our families. So we're trying to cohort by families. And we do recognize that what we're trying to capitalize on is 50% of the children within the building, not just in the district, but within the building. So the alphabet helps us gain that within classrooms too, not just the building, but within classroom working at a 50% capacity. Couldn't the PTO pay for it? I'm going to guess seeing your last question, Erin, means cleaning the playground. And we can certainly have those conversations as we get into the details of, again, right now we're talking more in terms of what we can provide as a district in some of those decisions. But as we start to go into what may be something that makes things more comfortable, that may be something that we work with our PTOs on. I hate saying it this way, but even when you look at our priorities, number one priority was safety. Comfort falls far down on that list, and so those are the things that we may reach out to families or to PTOs to create some of those comfort materials, comfort situations. So we will certainly work with you on that. Sherry.
I know you mentioned that, everything would donations would have to be individualized. So, I mean, would it be helpful for the school, considering you're having to pay for the individual chalk and rope, jump rope, or whatever it is that you guys are anticipating, for the parents just to make a donation towards those?
I appreciate, and I'd say those are things we can talk about offline, because these are the moments, I'm going to tell you this, there is no better place to have a pandemic than in Bridgewater, Washington, and Roxbury. No place that's better, because suddenly it's, what do we do to make this better? Where else do people get this kind of a support system? And so thank you, and I'm going to say we can have that conversation offline. I think.
Can I also say that PTO is already participating, and I thank PTO for that. Super job.
Yeah, we are already participating in purchasing a lot of this extra stuff for the individual play bags, Sherry. But if parents want to contribute to donate to the PTO, that'll help, because we have a lot of fundraisers planned throughout the year that we may not be able to have. So a direct donation to the PTO to help, buy additional items for the playground, or, sleds in the winter, for example, anything like that, would be greatly appreciated.
Perfect. Thank you.
And that does bring up a very good point, Jessica, the fact that we recognize some events may be impacted.
Right.
And so that does drain on our ability to do some of those things that we've typically done. So just as a heads up. The next question or statement we have is, will teachers better explain to students how to find their daily and weekly requirements rather than teachers assuming that parents can look? And I think that was the thing that we, and actually Michelle was in my committee as we talked about this, was our parents were having to serve as personal assistants to our children, like this executive functioning, and honey, you have a meeting at this time, don't forget the email, and what's this way? And it was get on Zoom, get on Google Meets, and get on Seesaw, and we were all over the place. And so what we've asked teachers to do is, going into next year, number one, you are to get the schedule on Friday evening for the week that we're going into. On that, it will have the link to the classes that they will be going to. We actually have created a model that every single teacher is going to be able to use. Elementary will have one model and secondary will have another. And the idea is, so this way, if we help provide some of the structures, it would help with the facilitation of how you can best support your children. And as I've said to a lot of people, last year, what I can assure you is that teaching happened. We did a lot of teaching. We don't always know how much learning happened. We did have a lot of kindergartners who were writing at the 34-year-old level by the end of the year. And it's to say that we also get that by the end, you're just like, just get it done. Tell me what you want me to write, sweetie, and we're going to write it down. And we recognize we may have been overstretching in what our demands were. And so to now come back and have those assignments and have things clearly so that way you can organize your life as well. We're trying to partner. We recognize you are our colleagues in this. And part of this is not having you fumble through. So you all need to thank Michelle for her her voice in that one, because it really, and I can tell you it was well received, and we want to make certain we're responding better to that. So yes, because I do agree that people need more than 15 to 30 minutes to then go find the email to find out where they're going to be. Knowing we've got the limited time, if you're set up in advance, it would be helpful. So that is well taken. So window ACs and windows open, and I'm going to say to you, ventilation is important. So it may be that. So recognizing yes. Love air conditioner. However, airflow, and I think you guys have the same thoughts. Can distance learner have a 1-to-1 virtual per week as needed with the teacher? We did discuss in our group during distance learning the importance of having that touchstone with the teacher, even if it's 5 minutes every week. I can't promise that if the decision is to go distance learning while everybody else is in person. However, I think to speak to Julie's comment, what is the orientation we're going to give, and how can we set up some of that interaction? But it may have to be on some different times, and we'll have to navigate what that looks like. So I don't want to overreach in that. I am looking at the time. We have hit 8 o'clock, so we're an hour into this, and I still have 32 more questions. So I'm going to say to you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to address one more question. I'm going to copy every question that is in the chat box. So while I'm answering this last question, please type any questions that you have that are remaining in the chat box, so I can make certain I capture that and provide written response to anything that may be lingering. We want to make certain, again, that you have the information to the best of our ability to provide, recognizing that we do continue to get variations in our advisement. We are making decisions that are for this moment and trying to generalize as best as possible. But we also recognize, and again, I know what can happen in a month. And right now, Connecticut is trending well because we do have people who are adhering to the 6 feet and the social distancing and the masks. And we know that things can change on a dime, but we want to make certain we're creating the situation the best we can. So if you have questions on how that's going to happen, please, again, put them in the chat box. I will make certain I capture those. So the next question I have, how will the sick days work if it's just a cold or allergies? How many days will they have to stay home with no fever? Will a COVID test be needed? So let's start with how many days do they need to stay home if it's cold or allergies? I would say, please work with our school nurses. They are going to be working, they are our medical advisors. I'm not going to say an arbitrary number. I think knowing that if you're working with them and we know what's happening, it may be something where you have a doctor's note that just says run-of-the-mill allergies, and this is what's happening. We may respond differently. So this is where the more information you provide us, the better we would be able to answer that question. I'm going to say to the quick answer on that, Christy, is the best legal answer that they ever give you is it depends. And it's not a very good answer. If it is indeed a COVID situation, and whether it's presumed positive or a positive COVID test, we would require a doctor's note for the return. I do not need the proof of COVID testing, but we would need a doctor's medical clearance. So I think that I'm going to end here because I think there's a lot of things I need to say to you all. Number one, I'm going to say thank you. You guys had the wildest ride last year. And we were talking about, you think about where we were in the fall and we were talking about multi-aging, and you all came out multiple nights to then have that change. And I thank you for your willingness and understanding, and not beating me up really bad in social media. Thank you. But I also want to say to you, thank you for making distance learning work. It would not have worked if it wasn't for you doing all of those things for your children and being side by side and communicating with us. And I also have to give a huge shout of appreciation to Mrs. Coelho, who was absolutely working tirelessly. And I don't think she's taken her vacation time at all during the summer, because she really is thinking in terms of how do we get your children safe. I've seen her in baseball hats at Newport, still calling into meetings to make certain she had all of the information. But what I want you to know is this is absolutely a situation where it is everybody pitching in. None of this would have happened if one part of the triangle wasn't there. So if it wasn't for leadership, if it wasn't for students, and if it wasn't for teachers, it would have fallen apart. But you guys, you are the absolute glue that made it all happen. And so I thank you. This is not the end of the conversation. If you have other things, you have questions you want to ask, please put that out there. I know I'm reading Erin still really wants to talk about this playground, and we will get to all of those things. But I do want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for your efforts. And we're going to learn together, and our goal is to keep your children safe. So thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
Yes,
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you, everyone, for showing up.
Thanks,
Great
Kathy.
questions.
Thanks for having this meeting.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, PTO. You are amazing.
Theo.
Thank you.
Bye.